Said that, what we would like to know today is there any room for our mighty Dove Global Health products in this current pandemic? And what I would like to do next is just show you a few studies that recently came out. And so to answer the question if our products do help or has a place for people who are preventing infection and of course of people who are already infected. Let's look at some of these studies. So for those of you who have never heard of our products, we have two products that we will feature today, the red reishi and of course the Pagani greens. So let's look at the red reishi first. Red reishi is from the mushroom Ganoderma Lucidum, and fungi or mushrooms in general have their own biologically active compounds. So this was a study done sometime or in March 17 of 2020 and published April 14 of 2020. A group of scientists from Thailand reviewed the natural bioactive compounds from fungus in search of a potential candidate for both protease inhibitors, and we'll discuss that later on, and immunomodulator as applied to coronaviruses. Now, I'm going to just give you the highlight of the research so we don't have to go through the paper itself. So let's first understand what does protease inhibition mean. Now, if you look at the viral replication process, you will find that after the virus enters the cell, it removes its nucleocapsid or coat. It has the uncoating phase. And after it is uncoated, okay, or after it removes its coat, it reveals its RNA sequence, the very blueprint of what makes the virus, that virus. It shows itself, but it's a very long strand. And so it has to be cut into smaller pieces so that the host cell can read them and duplicate them. Thus comes an enzyme called protease. Protease, like scissors, cut this long string of codes into smaller pieces that are readable for the host cell. And the researchers are focusing on inhibiting that particular enzyme. They already have found in their previous study that fungi, mushrooms have natural biologically active compounds that prevent the scissors from working. So it blocks the ability of the protease from cutting this long string of sequence into smaller pieces. Ergo, thus, it cannot be read by the host cell and you stop the replication process. That's the goal. So they looked at many mushrooms and asked the question, do some of these mushrooms have protease inhibitors that can be applied to coronaviruses? Of course, there are plenty, but we will be looking at only Ganoderma lucidum. So in this table, they found that Ganoderma lucidum has several biologically active agents that have been shown to have protease inhibition in HIV. That's right, in HIV. And now they're looking at and they're suggesting that these protease inhibitors like ganolucidinic acid A or ganoderic acid B, these protease inhibitors that are good for inhibiting the replication of HIV, these are potential candidates for doing the same in coronaviruses. So, if the question is, does red reishi have a role in preventing the spread of the pandemic? Here is the potential yes. The mushroom itself contains protease inhibitors that might interfere in the viral replication process. But that's only one side of the coin. They also ask the question, do some of these mushrooms have modulation activities? Now, immunomodulation, very long word, is the ability of these enzymes or the mushroom and the biological active compounds to control the immune system. Either one, to reduce the stimulation of the immune system, which is to suppress them, 2, to stimulate them, or 3, to enhance the efficacy of the vaccines as it helps stimulate the immunity. So they were looking also not only at the protease inhibition ability of the mushroom, they were also looking at the immunomodulation ability of the mushroom. Now, did they find anything? Of course they did. And they found out that in mushrooms, if you look at the ones that I've underlined, the principal immunomodulatory effect derived from the mushrooms is to stimulate the white blood cells like T cells, cytotoxic T cells, dendritic cells. These are cells that are actively participating in detecting and, of course, killing and inhibiting the progress of the virus. Not only are they good at that, they're also good at stimulating tumor necrosis factors, interleukin, and interferons, which prevent the spread of the virus itself. So there are immunomodulators in the mushrooms like lectins and proteins and so on and so forth, polysaccharides and terpenoids. And we're happy to share that Ganoderma has fungal immunomodulatory proteins found in it. You will find that in Ganoderma lucidum itself, they have immunomodulation biologically active compounds that stimulates the production of macrophages. These are large janitor cells that help swallow and eat these viruses. So yes, besides protease inhibition, Ganoderma can also help in building up your immune system so that they can detect and then prevent the spread of the virus. Now the mushroom also has polysaccharides and triterpenoids that does the following: induce the synthesis of interferons. These are chemicals that prevent the spread of the virus. Or it activates the production of macrophages and T lymphocytes. Or they can also help tame inflammation in the body once the virus is already attacking the host cell. So we have found in this study that Ganoderma lucidum, our red reishi, has a role in both prevention and probably treatment of the pandemic COVID-19, both in protease inhibition and, of course, in immunomodulation. Now, I probably, I have a very curious mind, and I looked into this question: is there any direct effect of Ganoderma on COVID-19 positive patients? Has there any been a study done on this? And I was surprised that the World Health Organization in its website published or included a study on the role of Ganoderma uptake on some hematological and immunological response in patients infected with coronavirus. Here's the paper. It was done in Iraq. And to make the long story short, this study shows how Ganoderma helped prevent the symptoms of coronavirus in positive patients. So let's look at this table for a while. I know there's several data here, but let's look at the first line, the control. So they divided their subjects or their patients into several groups. The first group was called the control. These were COVID-19 negative patients given placebo. And if you look at the results, there was no increase in the antibodies IgG and IgM. That's understandable. All right? There's nothing to stimulate the immune system. The second group are the Ganoderma group. These are coronavirus negative subjects that took Ganoderma. And since there's no virus, again, there is no stimulation and production of IgG and IgM antibodies. Now we come to the third group. These are patients that are COVID-19 positive patients, but did not get the Ganoderma or any kind of treatment. Yes, because they have the virus, its own response is to, of course, stimulate antibodies. And so you see the increase in IgG and IgM right here, okay? Now, there's a fourth group, and these are patients that have these are patients that are corona negative, but they got the plasma. Plasma, of course, they took this from patients who already survived the infection, and they injected them in subjects that are corona COVID-19 negative. There was a slight increase in antibodies and IgG, and IgM. Now, what I would like you to look at are the last two groups. The fifth group are COVID-19 positive subjects that got Ganoderma, and the last group are COVID-19 positive patients that got the plasma. And if you look at these two, you will find that they have very, very similar responses. All right? Both human plasma and Ganoderma enable the body to produce IgG and IgM antibodies. Now, the question is, what is a big deal about this? The big deal about this is when they looked at the symptoms, and in their conclusion, they found out that human plasma and Ganoderma have both the same effect on COVID-19 positive cases. They both increase the antibodies, plus they have a very important, significant role in reducing the bad or malicious effects of the overproduction of cytokines and antibodies and white blood cells. These are the ones that push the patient into the serious acute respiratory distress syndromes called SARS. Which means, all right, it helps curtail the deadly consequences of the COVID-19 virus. So if you're infected, it probably will shorten the progression of disease and prevent you from developing SARS, serious acute respiratory distress. And this is good news. All right? And the World Health Organization determined that it is a very important paper that they published or included it in its own website. So, does Ganoderma have a direct effect on COVID positive patients? According to this paper, the answer is yes. It helps build the immune system by increasing IgG and IgM, plus it helps reduce the bad effects of the overproduction of the white blood cells and the cytokines. Now, let's look at another product of ours, and it's Pagani Greens. So what does Pagani Greens, what will Pagani Greens do? How can Pagani Greens help people with the pandemic? This is a review article published in 2018, and it looked at the preventive and therapeutic role of barley, the ingredients in barley, in people with chronic problems. And according to their study, they found out that yes, just like the mushroom, barley also has an macrophage stimulatory effect, which means it also helps build the immune system against the viruses. So I would recommend both Pagani Greens and red reishi to protect ourselves from the pandemic's ill effects. So this is a macrophage, very huge white blood cell, and it loves to reach out and eat bacteria and viruses. So for those of you unfamiliar, red reishi is a pure extract of Ganoderma or reishi. It's an ancient remedy. In fact, as far back as 2,000 years ago, they have been using this in China, and they've called this the herb of deathlessness. In Japan, it's called reishi, and in China, it's called lingxi, and it's considered as Asia's #1 medicinal herb. Now, besides building your immune system and helping you with the pandemic, it has been known also to stop cancer growth by inducing a cellular suicide called apoptosis. It also helps prevent the spread of of cancer called metastasis. It inhibits the invasiveness and the mobility of cancer cells. And also it halts the growth of blood vessels that feed cancer. So it starves your tumor to death. Plus it blocks receptors that activates the overstimulation of the cells that leads to mutagenesis. There are, amongst other things, there are plenty of studies that show that Ganoderma is good for many, many things. In fact, if you look at this last paper right here, this was done by a group of scientists from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, and they have found out that Ganoderma is good for leukemia, lymphoma, and multiple myeloma. So here's the product right here. Red reishi is the organic extract of the fruit body and the spores of our mushroom grown in Japan. And you have the pure extract of both the fruit body and the spores, 200 milligrams of this per capsule. And you have 60 capsules in a bottle. And I would recommend for prevention, for protection, just to take 2 capsules a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. And if you are not feeling very well, maybe increase the dose to 4 capsules a day. And that will be 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon or evening. What about Pagani greens? Pagani greens contain 3 very powerful components: barley, alfalfa, and chlorella. Alright, you have 500 milligrams of the extract of these 3 ingredients in 1 capsule, and 1 bottle is good for 1 month. So if you look at the oxygen radical absorption capacity, or ORAC value, of the barley, which means its ability to neutralize toxins and free radicals in the body, you will find that young barley grass has the highest ORAC potential amongst many antioxidants in the market out there. So Pagani greens, we recommend that you take 2 capsules in the morning and also 2 capsules in the afternoon to protect yourself. So, again, besides taking our food supplements, like as the CDC recommends, wear your masks, keep your distance, and always eat healthy. Right? We have only one life to live, and so we need to protect this. Now, I am uncertain when the pandemic will go down or when we will find a cure, but this I know, that while it's out there, it is always best that we protect ourselves all the time. And I hope you find this presentation enlightening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the person who directed you to this presentation. Thank you.